Okay.
Sounds good.
I won't make you run out through your shirt. I'll just clip on your. Sir?
All right.
Okay.
Well, obviously, another great recruiting class for 2014. There's a lot of excitement about this class because we've filled a lot of our needs. You can see that the film basically speaks for itself. We once again have went from basically Detroit all the way to Florida and have worked that area primarily the last 4 years in recruiting. Once again, we did very well from Cleveland to Pittsburgh. We signed 9 guys in that area, and that's basically kind of become our backyard with the dwindling population in Youngstown and the Valley. That's been a primary area for us, and being able to get out of state and have success in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Virginia, and obviously Detroit helps us fill our class with the type of players that we think we need to win the Missouri Valley Conference, and our staff is to be commended. Obviously, a lot of our academic people on campus, Dr. Mincy, Dr. Cooper, we just had a tremendous outpouring of help from the academic side of things on campus. Dr. Dunn had come and stepped in and helped us out, Ron Strollo. So it's really a team effort, but our staff deserves to be commended for all the hard work. You know, some of these guys we've been recruiting for 3 years, and that's a long time when you think about that recruiting process. Once again, it pays to come to football camp. 12 of these 24 guys, and a lot of them, a portion of them were out of state. If you come to football camp here at Youngstown State, there's a pretty good chance you'll have a chance to sign with us on signing day. And so basically half of our recruiting class, we had kids from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida in our camp, and that's a great opportunity to get yourself some exposure and see what Youngstown State's all about. But alphabetically, I'll go through these guys, give you a little background on them briefly. But Jalen Brown is a guy we had in camp. He's from St. Clairsville, and he's, you know, a very fast player. You guys obviously saw that on film. He played running back. He can play receiver. He's a little bit of a taller version of Andre Stubbs. Being that Stubbs will be a junior this year, we wanted to make sure we had someone in line there to kind of become the next Andre Stubbs type player for us. Cole Costi is an offensive lineman that we had in camp, very aggressive. Some people may say he's a little bit undersized as far as his height, but I just love his passion for the game of football. He'll play center for us, and I think he'll have a chance to come in and do some really good things. You know, his dad played at Pitt with Coach Sims, so obviously there's another tie there, and he's a Western PA guy. Shane Dixon, I could tell you a lot of stories about him in the recruiting process, but at the end of the day, Youngstown State prevailed, and we were battling a lot of different scenarios. You know, he's down there at IMG Academy. That's the new school in Florida, and so it was an interesting recruiting process, but Shane felt good about coming here. He's obviously a big, rangy safety at 6'4". He's got a very bright future. He's got a bright smile, walks into a room, and can really, you know, show his presence at an early age. And if he continues to fill out, I have high expectations for him next fall. Stephen Jeffries is a guy that we had in camp. He's from Neshannock, right over there by Newcastle. He played tight end, played defensive line in high school. Looking at his frame, you can tell where he's going to play, offensive line. But most NFL players that go on and play in the NFL at O-line don't play O-line in high school. So it's a unique trait to have. He's a guy that will continue to develop. I expect him to be a 300-pounder, 315-pound guy as he continues to progress throughout his career here. Shane Kuhn, as a tight end from Kiski area right there in western Pennsylvania. We've been recruiting Shane for basically 3 years. My first time having an encounter or actually seeing him in person wrestle, he was wrestling Dylan Colucci, one of our players currently on the team. And he's an outstanding wrestler. Probably could go to college as a wrestler. But for a guy that hasn't spent a lot of time in the weight room, I think the sky's the limit with him. Much like a Jacob Wood, I would expect him to have a chance to come in and contribute with some plays as far as next fall. He can also long snap. He's a great athlete, but he's easily going to be 250 pounds at the blink of an eye. Crispin Lee, you guys saw him. He's from down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's a lengthy, long corner, tremendous top end speed, great burst, great ball skills. One time he was a Western Michigan commit, visited Akron and some other places, but he's a guy that we've been recruiting for a long time, and obviously we like corners that can run and come up and hit you. So, and he has some length to him. Johnson Lugene is from Immokalee, Florida. Another very interesting recruiting process, but once again, Youngstown State prevailed with him. He's a guy that didn't even play as a junior. You know, he has a unique background as far as his family situation, moving to the United States. But he's a guy that has a tremendous amount of growth potential. He could easily be 230 pounds within a year at the most once he starts eating 3 meals a day and proper training. So we're excited about him. He'll be a Sam linebacker for as long as he can be. He very well could grow out of that position, but I see him as being a Sam linebacker for the time being. Ryan Moore was one of our running backs that we identified early. He's from basically York, South Carolina, which is the Rock Hill area. Rock Hill area in South Carolina is basically one of the top areas for producing NFL talent in the United States. And it's an area that I became familiar with when I was at South Carolina. You guys have heard of Jadeveon Clowney, Stephon Gilmore. I can go down the list. But Bobby Carroll was his coach. And Bobby told me, he said, "Wolf, this is probably one of the best that I've had," which is a very powerful statement when you consider the amount of first-rounders he's had. He's a tough kid. Reminds me a lot of Jermaine Cook, but he has top-end speed. He's here now, currently enrolled in school, so we're excited about that. And I think he's just got a tremendous amount of upside. He has that thickness that Jermaine Cook has. L.J. Mosley is an offensive lineman that we recruited 2 years ago, and he's from down there in Trotwood, Madison, and he ended up not qualifying, so he went out to Scottsdale, and we've obviously kept up with him. You can see that he's a very big guy. He's 6'5", 320 pounds. He's an offensive guard. Very similar to Lamar Mady, you know, as far as his body type, his ability as far as playing at this time in his career. He does have more height than Lamar, so he's probably 2 inches taller than Lamar. So we're going to hold him to a high standard and expect him to be an impact player. Brandon Peters from the Robinson High School pipeline, Martin Ruiz, obviously last year. Brandon Peters is the guy you saw with the Polamalu type hair out there. He's just a tough football player. He's a guy that plays nickel, he plays Sam, he can play down the box, he can play on special teams, he can punt. I mean, anything, he can do anything that you ask him to do. Just a very well-rounded athlete. He has just a unique ability to be a leader. He's a leader of his football team. At the same time, I expect him to, at an early age, I could see him being a leader of this recruiting class just because of the way he handles himself. Nathan Pittman was one of our first commits really out of Florida. He was here in the summer, and you know, there's another example of a guy from Florida making the trip up here for camp, and obviously it's paid dividends. But he's a big middle linebacker that basically can run the show in there. He's really 230 pounds, but we wanted to make him feel good about his body weight, so we put 225 down there. But he's a guy that Jalen Kelly type guy that can step in and basically get the guys up front squared away and control the back end, and we're excited about having him. Adrian Rankin is a guy from Winton Woods. He had a tremendous amount of recruiting action early on. We identified him early. Obviously, we offered him, and things kind of worked out here at the end for us. One time we probably deemed him as untouchable, but that changed, and we're excited about having him here. Obviously, Winton Woods has a tremendous track record of putting a lot of players in college football, specifically Division I, and he's played at a high level of football down there in that area. You guys know that the Cincinnati area has become really strong in the football, high school football. Jeff Rotherman is a unique guy. I always call him Rotherman. It's really Rotherham. His brother played at Pitt, so he was at the Pitt game. So the first time he saw me, he said, "That was a bad game, Coach." I said, "No, that was a good game. It's the first time we ever beat a BCS team." So it's interesting that his brother's a starting guard for them. He'll be a senior this year, and Jeff is a guy that we went back and reevaluated again as a senior. It's amazing that how big he really is and how well he moves. He's a guy that I think with some development, really the sky's the limit as far as what he can become. He's 6'7" all day long. Some people would probably say 6'8", but he moves very well. He has obviously a background in football, being with his brother there, and I expect him to help us out early on at the offensive line position. Sidney Sandage is a running back that is originally from Virginia, but by way of Fork Union. We know a bunch of coaches over there at Fork Union. Obviously, we have some players from there, and they come from a very structured background. Those guys get up and march, wear uniforms, that whole deal. But he's a very good football player. You guys saw him. He's a longer running back. He's one of those guys he's already 205 pounds, I think, since he's been here. So he's put on some weight. He can be very much like a Jordan Thompson as far as that height and that size that you see there. So he'll be a freshman. He's currently in class here, so we're excited about that. And you can see all of his track times there. They speak for themselves as far as his speed, along with the film. Nick Shealy's a guy that we're excited about here from Austintown Fitch. He's a punter. He really did everything for them, but for us, he will focus on punting and kickoffs. Those will be his two primary focus points early on. And he's got a really strong leg. I think as he continues to grow and we start developing some of these Aussie punts and some other things that we like to do, he'll have a chance to be the whole package, and we're excited about having him here. Cody Squarick is a guy that was in camp also. He's from Indiana, Pennsylvania. He primarily played defensive line his whole career, and we talked to his coach and told him that, we think this guy has a future in offensive line play. So he played some offensive line, but primarily his career he's been a defensive line guy. He's really strong. He's coming in at basically 300 pounds. The other day he told me he did 405 pounds 3 times on a bench press, which is pretty good for a guy that's still in high school. So he'll be a 500-pound bencher, 400-pound power clean guy that should be able to move some people for us. And, he's obviously right here in that western PA region, which has been good to us. Jonathan Stewart is from Kissimmee, Osceola, which is just basically north of the Orlando area, kind of off the beaten path slightly. But Jonathan's a guy that we recruited as a will linebacker, and that's basically the other linebacker that'll play in the box there. He's a big kid. He weighed 233 here on his visit. My first discussion with him is don't be accepting any free pizzas from Coach Sims, and trying to blow you up to 250 and playing defensive line. So stay at 230, so we can play you at linebacker. But he's a great kid, great family, and we're excited to have him. Jacob Studdard is from Detroit, Michigan, really Southfield, but he's a very physical corner. I think you saw that on film. He has some length to him. He has some football savvy. He's a tough kid, and when he came down here for the weekend, I could just tell within basically a half hour of being around him that he had that corner type mentality as far as one play is not going to affect the rest of his game. He's got some toughness to him, and he's come up the hard way, and he's persevered, and that's a compliment to him and his family. DJ Thomas is a guy from St. Ed's. You guys know about their football tradition there. DJ was in our camp. DJ can play corner. DJ can play receiver. we're going to play him at corner. He's a physical presence. He's one of those guys that's maybe considered a little bit undersized by some people, but he's got that chip on his shoulder to find a way to get things done. And we're excited to have a guy from St. Ed's in our program because they understand winning and what it takes to be a winner. Chance Towery dipped down into Asheville, North Carolina. And that's obviously a nice place for you guys to go and visit when you have some free time. Take your wife, Dana. But Chance has been a really outstanding player there at AC Reynolds High School, and he plays tight end. Well, as a junior, when I watched him off film, I said, well, this guy's probably 250 pounds. And he ended up not weighing that much, but he has the growth potential to be 250, 260, 270 pounds. So we'll just kind of watch how his growth goes. He will start out at tight end, play tight end, and do an outstanding job there. But if he ends up growing out of the position, he can play a lot of positions. He could very easily go over and play defensive end. He could play 3 technique. He could play somewhere on the O-line. It's just a matter of his growth. But he has a tremendous amount of growth potential. His dad played in college, so we'll just kind of monitor how that goes. But we like starting out with him at tight end, obviously. Raekwon Washington is that big back. You guys saw him. He won the state championship. He's out of Shelby High School. Shelby's a very popular school in the Carolinas. It's kind of off the beaten path. You got to work to get there, but very good football. And Raekwon's playing basketball right now, and obviously he's a very good athlete. State championship game, he played quarterback. We had him in camp. Here's another kid from Shelby, North Carolina, coming to Youngstown, Ohio, coming to camp, and obviously it paying off for him. But he's a guy that he can play a lot of positions on the field. He'll play running back, but he is that big back, that guy that will be very easily 220, 225 pounds. Got to watch him eating too because he likes to eat a lot. Dwayne Williams is out of Mulberry, which is basically just south of Lakeland, Florida. Another area that's off the beaten path. Unique story about this kid is you guys have all heard of Lakeland, Florida, as far as the Dreadnoughts. Florida signed 11 players out of there 1 year in one recruiting class. And Dwayne started there as a freshman. That doesn't happen on the offensive line. And it was just too far for him to commute from Mulberry. So his mom and dad basically said, you probably need to go to Mulberry. That's where his dad went to high school, so he finished up his career there. And, you know, we're excited to have him. He's another big, powerful guy, much like a Brock Eisenhuth type build. Very strong, powerful. Just got to continue to keep an eye on monitoring his weight so he doesn't get too heavy. But obviously, he's a guy that we feel good about there at the guard position. Hunter Wells, I think his resume speaks for itself. Stark County Player of the Year, set all kind of records. Anytime you got a nice 6'5", 190-pound quarterback, that's encouraging. He's finishing up basketball now. He's one of those guys that basically plays everything. He'll be here in the summer, and he'll be one of those guys that'll be fighting for a quarterback job along with all the other guys on our football team. And, you know, Shane Montgomery, who Coach Roethlisberger said, I see a lot of similarities in this guy and Ben. You know, Ben early in his career was very thin. So that's a pretty good comparison, and I hope it holds true. Kevin Wilson is another kid that came to camp all the way from Lakeland, Florida, and he's a guy that can basically patrol the middle of the field. Great basketball player too. He's got a tremendous amount of upside as far as his growth potential. He could very easily be 200 pounds by the time he gets here, which is something that we'd like to see happen. He'll be here at the end of June. But we just loved him in camp, and about a month after camp, he called and said that he was going to commit to Youngstown State. So that's basically our 2014 class there. And you guys have any questions for me, I'll take those.
Coach, you said 12 of these 24 kids were in your camp?
12,
this class
yes.
was in camp?
Half of this class was in camp, and, you know, it's something that I feel is important, you know. If you're going to go and buy basically a $100,000 car, I mean, you're going to test drive it. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you want to be recruited by Youngstown State, you need to come to camp. And that's the reality. And I'm always going to take a guy from camp first, because I've had a chance to work with them in person. And the guys that we've taken from camp have all been successful. Chris Elkins just played an East-West Shrine game. You know, I mean, there's an example. You know, Nate Adams, I mean, I can go down the list. But there's a definite correlation between success and working with a guy in camp.
The running backs, you've got a lot of running backs. You've got 3 in this class. Did you feel like you needed to fill that, or were these just guys you couldn't pass out?
I'm trying to create a formation where you can play with 6 running backs. But you can't never have enough running backs, you know. That's just something that I believe in. You know, they take shots, they get hurt, and, you know, we can't afford to have a drop-off. In our league that we play in, there's so much parity that you can't just have a huge drop-off between your first and second running back and your third, you know. And I also believe in competition, you know, and we're going to continue to press the envelope as far as bringing in talent. Our philosophy has always been, we are going to bring someone in next year that we think is better on film than the previous recruiting class. If not, we're not going to sign them. So that way we can continue to elevate the talent. We have got to elevate our talent, continue to elevate it like we are a Big 12 or a Big 10 school. You know, the team that wins in our league just beat Kansas State. Kansas State beat Michigan in a bowl game. I mean, so we got to get out of this thinking that we're like trying to recruit a MAC type player. I mean, we've got to have a BCS type mentality as far as who we're recruiting, and find a guy that a BCS school would consider good enough to play at their school.
Does Hunter Wells remind you of Brock Jensen a little bit?
He's taller, much taller, but similarity as far as just a player. You know, some of the things, some of the clips that you saw in film, a lot of people don't realize Hunter played basically 6 games on a high ankle sprain, so he was really kind of immobile as far as a good portion of the year. I think when you see him run around, he will be much more like a Dante or a Ricky Davis, you know, but he wasn't able to run. He showed me the pictures on a home visit of his ankle, and it's amazing that he played, quite frankly.
You said he'll be here in the summer?
He'll be here at the end of June. Those guys will start summer school in 6 hours, and there's a new rule now that we're allowed to have film sessions 2 hours per week with our freshmen that are coming in and our football team, which is a good rule that's passed, and we're allowed to be around our players in the weight room. So, you know, there's been a problem in college football that in the summers a lot of players have been getting a little bit sideways with their football teams about their behavior, and us college coaches have felt strongly that us not being able to have a presence with them on a daily basis has inhibited us from being able to reinforce the real values that you need to have to be a successful college football player and a person in our society.
You mentioned he'll compete. Does that translate in that he could be the starter if he wins it?
You never know. You know, it's I think now with the ability to work with a guy in the summer and have film sessions before you even go to two-a-day practice, you know, the whole month of July, he'll have a chance to sit down and do 2 hours of film study a week, along with doing all the other activities with our football team, the 7-on-7s, the 1-on-1s, the fundamentals in the weight room, that really the sky's the limit. And it's hard to project where we'll be at quarterback by then, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, Kurt has graduated, and it's a wide open competition. And you know, my thing is I want to have 3 guys that can play. You know, I'm not just looking for one. I know that we got 1 guy that can play. I want to have 3 in case one guy gets knocked down or body slammed.
You've had 2 coaching changes so far. Do you anticipate any more?
Not that I know of, but you know, I get resumes all the time, so it seems like it might be more jobs open than I know. But as far as I know, we got 2 jobs open. The response has been overwhelming. I'll start to work on that the next few weeks, but we have a lot of really good coaches that want to work here, and that's encouraging.
Eric, this is the first time that we've met with you since it came out that you're going to get an extension. Can you just talk about that?
I haven't really had a lot of talk about it. I haven't really even necessarily went there, other than the fact that Ron and I had visited briefly. It hasn't really been my focus. My focus primarily has been on recruiting, and then obviously I'll be handling the hiring process. But I'll have a representative obviously sit down and work out anything we need to work out contract-wise and make sure that it's good for both parties. And you know, we're excited about the fact that the community, Dr. Dunn, Ron Strollo, and everyone has confidence and sees the things that we're doing here. And you know, we hope to continue to get better every year. It's not coming at a fast enough pace for me, it never will. But our pursuit of a championship will never change. We'll never back down from that. And that's the way we recruit. That's the way we coach. That's the way we'll talk. We're going to pursue it. It's some people say, well, it's not as easy to do nowadays. I said, well, doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, things have changed. They have. I mean, populations in Youngstown have changed. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed. But we're not going to back down from our pursuit of doing that. And you know, we're going to make it happen.
Coach, even though you haven't been part of that playoff group yet, what kind of difference in the response are you getting to Youngstown State, even though it's named at the top of that list?
The first response is nationally, we are very well recognized in recruiting and football accomplishments. People recognize that we're doing great things. There's a lot of people that were upset that we didn't get in. You know, the rating system said that we should have got in. We didn't. That's a conference issue. That's nothing that I can divulge in. We'll have a conference meeting, and I'm sure we'll get some kind of clarity why they took more teams from lesser leagues, but that's not really my thing. Only thing I can control is making sure at the present time, being in the moment and making sure we're signing the best players we can. But it's been great. You know, we went to the convention. A lot of coaches were voicing their opinion to me over and over again about their disappointment about us not getting in, our conference only getting two teams in. But you know, some things are out of my control, and one of these days we'll quit letting things not be in our control, and we'll have control of our destiny, and that's something we got to continue to hammer home.
Coach, twice you've mentioned the dwindling population in Youngstown. How has that affected you?
Well, I think the thing is you know, at one time in the 90s there were 6 public schools. You know, I think this year there was 4 Division I players in the Valley. You know, 1 went to Virginia Tech, 2 went to Kentucky, and 1 came to Youngstown. I mean, my senior year in 1989, I know it's a long time ago, but we had 7 Division I players from 1 school. You know, it's just been that kind of a situation in the Valley, and that's why we've had to really get out and expand to the out-of-state areas, because Cleveland and Pittsburgh is basically good for basically 7 to 10 players probably on average for us in recruiting, and those have been good players. Where do we get the other 10? You know, where do we go? You know, and we get into Cincinnati a little bit sometimes, but Ohio has so many MAC schools fighting one another for the type of player that I've got to continue to expand my recruiting network from other places I've been, where we can find a guy that we think can beat a BCS team. And that's our mindset right now. And fortunately, we have those connections in those out-of-state areas that we're able to tap into.
There may have been a guy or two in the area that was good enough to play here that maybe opted not to play college football. In your experience, how odd is it when a guy has that ability to play at FCS, FBS level, and doesn't pursue football?
Well, I think, you know, a lot of times my experience has been when a guy opts not to play college football, I think the thing is he's either burnout, you know, on the process. You know, some high schools, they practice 4 hours a day. You know, it's a grueling process. I think the other thing is, you know, sometimes maybe in the back of their mind they question whether they can play at that level, and do they want to put their body at risk, or do they want to go ahead and just divulge, jump into their education and their career process? And it's probably very similar to myself when I got cut by the Cardinals. Did I want to continue to keep trying out, or did I want to go ahead and go back and work for Coach Snyder at Kansas State and start coaching? So, you got to make career decisions, and sometimes maybe if you feel like, there's not really a light at the end of the tunnel as far as college career, then I think you jump into the career-minded education type avenue.
Out of the 24, how many legitimately could be a starter come August? How many do you plan to redshirt, or is it too much?
I think you're going to see a good portion of those guys on defense have a chance to play. I don't necessarily want to say a starter. Martin Ruiz didn't start to the 5th game. For us, I think it was 5th or 6th game. I don't really keep track of that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of those secondary guys, they can come in here and have a chance to be in our 2 deep immediately, and how well they do, and with the opportunity to work with guys in July. The offensive linemen, I want a red shirt. We'll get those guys ready. Rankin could come in and potentially do some things. Shane Kuhn could do some things. Jalen Brown's a returner also. So I don't put any limits on the skill positions, but primarily the offensive linemen are probably the only guys that I expect to potentially redshirt just for their career. But I think a good portion of those linebackers, safeties, and corners, tight end, Jalen, and the running backs, those guys all got a shot to go.
How about Shealy? Obviously, it can't be easy to replace Nick List. He's got some shoes to fill. Can you talk about
He'll be fine.
your expectations?
Hey, there's a lot of guys from Fitch have kicked the ball pretty well here, but he's up to the task. When I talked to him yesterday, he said, "Coach, I'm reassured that you're just asking me to punt, which is obviously a tough task when you have to do all 3, punt and kick off, and he'll have plenty of time between now and July to start developing his body, working on the process. When you're a kicker, and then you have to start working on kicking off the ground. See, punting, there's not really that much different. So he'll be able to continue to develop his body. Kickoffs will work on some things there, but the punting part will still be the same. And he has a strong leg. It's just a matter of continuing to be consistent and being able to handle your nerves."
Eric, because he's left-footed, does that appeal to you in any way?
No, I didn't study the spin on the ball or anything. But no, nothing of significance. I mean,
4 Division I guys from this area, even though the population is dwindling, did it seem like this year in particular was maybe down?
well, Mark Porter's a good friend of mine, obviously, and he told me that, I think we knew that coming into the year, but, it was a really, really down year, and I don't know how you pinpoint it, but, it's just been a down year for the Valley, and I think, obviously signing day tells you exactly where it is. Next year looks obviously better, but, at one time, I would say in the state of Ohio, probably back in the 90s, early 90s, that this was probably one of the more popular destinations as far as coming to get tough kids that want to work hard and do things right. And, it's just, it's changed. The people have moved, the jobs have been whatever the reason may be, it's just not the same.
Eric, just one defensive lineman on here. You're pretty comfortable with the guys you have right now?
I feel good about our guys, and obviously evaluating last year, Rankin's a guy that's got the size that we're looking for a little bit there. There's some other potential opportunities out there that I can't really discuss, but I wasn't going to reach. And like I said before, I'm not going to take a guy that, is not better than Derek Rivers, Vince Coleman, Zaborski, Manuel Chroma, those guys. And those guys are all good players for us. Octavius Brown's healthy, he was hurt all last year. We were kind of banged up there, but I feel good about where those guys are. They're getting bigger and stronger in the weight room and putting weight on and doing the things they need to do to dominate the line of scrimmage, and that's our expectation up front.
Pretty high ceiling for Rankin?
What's that?
Pretty high ceiling for Rankin?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think he'll start at defensive end. If he continues to grow and develop, he'll stay at defensive end, but he very well could move inside because of his growth potential. He's a young kid right now. I don't know where his teammate went, but his teammate was being recruited by USC and everybody. And there's been times when you watch the film, who's who. That's a good sign.
You mentioned, the program is known nationwide, recognized nationwide, I should say. Is it tougher to recruit against FBS schools because you're an FCS school?
Yes, there's no doubt. I mean, I lost a kid to Boise State that was going to come here. Boise State used to be us. They made the change, we didn't. But my point is Boise State makes the phone call, offers him. I mean, this kid's in Lakeland, Florida. They take him. Prior to that, the only people recruiting him was us and Lake Erie College. I want you to think about that now. He's going to Boise. Another kid I recruited for basically a year, and Ball State offered him 10 days before signing date. He's going to Ball State. That's a little frustrating, But that's why I have to have a long list, long list. Some kids are caught up in that one letter, FBS, FCS, and I had to do a comparison. I was like, well, let's sit down and look at this. The MAC conference has how many players playing in an all-star game? How many do we have? How many do we have at Youngstown? How many does the Missouri Valley Conference have playing in the East, West, and the Shrine game compared to the MAC? You can show them that, but they don't see it. They don't see past that because there's still that FBS, and it's something that we have to overcome, and our relationships have to be strong enough that we can endure that because they try to jump on late. Once again, last 2 weeks of signing date have been absolutely miserable. I mean, we were successful, but there's a lot of schools that come in and jump in late and try to take your guys, and you got to keep your cool as far as not getting upset because you don't want to ruin your relationship, and that was the strength of the recruiting process to begin with.
Does there have to be some limitations on recruiting somehow, the NCAA?
I don't know if there'll ever be any. I think there'll be an early signing period. I think there's two things that can happen that it'll be interesting to see how they impact us. One is early signing period. So for example, if there was an early signing period in December, the kid that went to Boise would be here. There would be no Boise. So that's one example. The same thing with the kid that went to Ball State because they were late to the party. Now at the same time, I think with the transition of the big boys going to the 5 league, so now where does that leave that next tier? What are they? What really is their identity? So now do kids say, I want to be a BCS guy? It used to be when I grew up, it was I want to be D1, D1, D1. Well, now it's FBS, BCS, Division I. Well, okay, now is it going to become I want to be a BCS guy? So then where does that affect the next couple tiers as far as schools? What's that do to the FBS? What's that do to the FCS? Because they're not going to be in the playoff system. So there's going to be an interesting transition in the next few years to see what happens.
So you lost 2 kids this year because?
I lost 2 kids that they weren't committed.
Okay.
So, but I felt 90%, I was told, listen, Coach, 90%, I'm coming to Youngstown, 90% sure, okay? So, that's what happens. All right, man.